Hi, everyone. Today is our last Did You Know session on National Suicide Prevention Week. So we are calling it Speak Up Saturday. Now we're going to start with some common myths and facts around suicide, hopefully clear the air there, and then we're going to recap basically what we've talked about throughout this week. So the first myth that I want to talk about is the idea that you should not talk to someone about suicide. You shouldn't ask if they're thinking about it because you could put the idea in their head. And that's just really not true. Usually the person will be relieved to have kind of that opportunity to share their actual thoughts without being judged, and communicating with them and actually having that opportunity. That's going to actually reduce the risk of an impulsive act. So in many cases, it's much better to ask if a person is thinking about suicide. Another myth is that a person who talks about suicide doesn't follow through. The idea that they're just doing this for attention, or they're just talking about it for attention. And this, really, that's not true either. The fact is that most people who go on to die by suicide in some way make their intentions known, whether that's talking about it or having other behaviors that are related to it and things like that. So if they are talking about it, it's a really good sign that they do actually need help. They need attention in a way. So that's something to keep in mind, that, taking this seriously, if they're talking about it, that can definitely save lives. We have 6 myths here. So the third one is that people who want to die, or people who are talking about it maybe, will find a way. And this also isn't true. So, most people don't actually want to die. They're in a lot of pain, whether that's kind of emotional pain, physical pain, anything like that. So they don't actually want to die. They just want their pain to go away. And they think that's kind of their only option. So if we can help them take that pain away, that's going to actually take away their desire to die and things like that as well. Oops. So another myth is someone who, quote unquote, has their act together is not at risk for suicide. And this is kind of like, you can't judge a book by its cover. You don't know what's going on in someone's head at any time, really. So if you see warning signs, even in someone who, you would never think would be thinking about suicide, it's really important not to brush that off. It's really important to reach out and kind of dig a little further into that. And then another myth is that when a person is thinking about suicide, they will also always be suicidal. This isn't really true, but it is important to take note, because it's usually an impulse, right? So if we can get past that point where the person feels like, they are really thinking about suicide, that's a good thing. And chances are they won't go on to die by suicide. But these feelings can come back. They can occur again. So it is important, while they will not always be suicidal, it's important to realize and be supportive of people, especially who have, had these thoughts or maybe attempts in the past, because that is a risk factor. It just doesn't guarantee that they will always be suicidal or something like that. Another myth is that there's, no connection or little to no connection between substance use and suicide. And really, there is a connection, because alcohol and other drugs increases a person's impulsivity. So, people will make bad decisions that they wouldn't have made otherwise, because they have been using substances. So that can also apply to suicide. That can also increase a person's risk for suicide. All right, so those are, again, just some common myths that we've gone through, that we hear a lot of times, and hopefully some facts to kind of make sure that we are all on the same page there. So now I'm just going to do a quick recap of what we have talked about this week. So if you've seen my other Did You Know sessions for National Suicide Prevention Week, you will already have this information. But I want to go over it one more time, make sure it's all in one place. So if today is the only day that you have tuned in, you'll still have this information. So some common risk factors for suicide include, mental illness or a serious mental or a medical illness. So kind of any sort of illness there that can be really taxing on a person, and that can increase the chances are that they will attempt or die by suicide. Other ones, high level of stress, recent tragedy or loss, any kind of problems, whether that's financial, legal, again, medical or something like that. And then things like bullying and access to lethal means. So just having access does kind of increase the risk for a person's, for the chances that a person might go on to die by suicide. And then some warning signs. So these are different from risk factors, again, because warning signs, if you're seeing these, this is kind of an immediate risk. If you're seeing those risk factors, it's not necessarily an immediate risk. It's just something to kind of keep in mind and maybe just be aware of and talk to that person a little bit. But this is where you really want to start taking action. So anytime a person's talking about feeling hopeless, being a burden on their family or friends, or if they're actually, again, talking about killing themselves. Excuse me, if a person has maybe increased their substance use, that could be a warning sign as well, as along with, isolation, whether that's kind of from family and friends, or maybe not participating in social activities that they used to. And then the last two here, so giving away prized possessions, that's definitely a really big red flag. And same with saying goodbye to, people that are important to them and things like that. So again, if you're seeing these signs, now is the time to act. So just a couple suicide facts that we had talked about the other day. So on average, someone in the United States dies by suicide every 11 minutes throughout the whole year, throughout the night, throughout the day, every 11 minutes. So that's a lot of people dying by suicide in our country. It's also the second leading cause of death for people between ages 10 and 34, and it's the 10th leading cause of death overall. And also almost 1 in 5. So 18.8% of high school students have serious thoughts of suicide each year. So that is a huge number. That's something that we really need to try to get as far down as we possibly can. So when we're talking to someone about suicide, we want to keep in mind that it's important to be direct. It's important to ask a question, something like this. You don't have to ask this exact question, but something just like, are you thinking about suicide? If you think that someone might be thinking about suicide, it's important to ask that question. You can tell them why you are concerned, maybe what behaviors you're seeing in them that led you to believe that, and just let them know, try to get across to them that you are here, you care about them, you're not going anywhere. So when you ask that question, you just don't want to be judgmental. You want to allow them to have the time to talk. This should really be about them, right? So they should be able to kind of lead the conversation. And then finally, you want to assist the person in finding professional help. So again, there's only so much that we can do. We might care about our family and friends a lot, but there's only so much we can do. So kind of referring them and helping them get professional help is crucial. And then last thing here, I just want to share the resources that I have shared throughout the week. So again, you can always screenshot this or take a picture, but we have the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, the Crisis Text Line. These next ones are kind of more information based. So the National Institute of Mental Health, the CDC, National Alliance on Mental Illness, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and then the Detroit Wayne Integrated Health Network Crisis Helpline. That is one that you could also reach out to in a crisis. And finally, we are LAHC. So our number is here and our email as well. You can always reach out to us. We can help a person get help as well. So I want to thank you for tuning in throughout this week. And the more we talk about suicide, the more resources we share, the fewer people will go on to die by suicide. So hopefully we can keep this up throughout the year, and just make sure that we just keep talking about it. So I hope you have a great rest of your weekend, and stay tuned for our social media in the future. Bye, everyone.